All right, team, welcome to the Boulder Athlete Podcast. I'm Josh, and I'm hanging out with Jason Grubb today, whom you might know. And yeah, man, this is going to be a good one. Today, we're talking about some things that are really meaty. Jason, things that you and I have discussed a whole bunch, and I want to just get this on record, essentially, so others can benefit from these discussions. So the meat of today's discussion, Jason, is going to be about the next cycle. So we're currently in the Keystone Cycle. We did a podcast where we talked about the ways that you've orchestrated that and put that together. So we'll do a little bit of a recap, but then the meat of our discussion is going to be focused on what's coming up in this next cycle. What are the things that you're focused on? What are some of the nuances that you've infused to make that cycle especially great as we lead into the Open? And that I'm excited to get there. So, okay, I think I've teed it up. Jason, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks for having me, man. It's always fun. This is our podcast. It's fun to be a guest on our own podcast, actually. I feel honored to be here and great to be here with you, man. I mean, we get to talk multiple times a week, but now we get to record this conversation.
That's right. Lucky us and lucky everybody else. Let's get to it. Okay. So let's start talking about the Keystone Cycle first. We did a great conversation on this before. So we're not going to go deep here, but let's do a little bit of a recap. Remind us on some of the things that you had adjusted as part of the Keystone Cycle. We had captured a whole bunch of feedback and we've been doing it all. So we've got our own thoughts. What are some of the things that you infused there and lessons that you've learned and how you felt about it? Just take that wherever you want to go with it.
Yeah, one of the fun things about the Keystone Cycle was it was the first cycle that our young company, Boulder Athlete, had entered into and significantly changed the template of what the week looks like. Historically, and even still on Mondays, I walk into the gym and I'm ready to snatch because historically we snatched on Mondays. We were pressing on Tuesdays, squatting Wednesdays, clean and jerks Fridays, and then Saturdays were, bench, deadlift, full send, and a burner to finish it off. And it was really the first cycle where we mixed that up, and it was based on wanting to make it feel fresh, change the days of the week based on feedback. Some people were like, hey, it'd be interesting if we could change this and this. We had some athletes that were swapping Tuesday and Wednesday sessions already because they wanted to have a little more time for shoulders to recover from between Monday and Wednesday. Took all that feedback and thought we would experiment with having clean and jerk on a Monday, squats on Tuesdays. I know I'm caught between cycles because I'm already thinking about the next cycle. So Wednesdays we've done pressing, which allowed us to do a lot of burpees in our Wednesday red workouts. That was just actually a perfect scenario right there. Fridays were snatches, which was today, which we completed. We're actually finishing the last big week of this cycle. And Saturdays, again, a bit of a potpourri, but really enjoying that little sort of bench and handstand walking pieces and deadlifts that we have on Friday. That cycle was all about building capacity, really laying a foundation of overall capacity without overemphasizing really anything in that cycle. And what I mean by that is, there's some cycles where you might start to lean into some real painful efforts. And I'm thinking again about as we're preparing for the CrossFit Open, we tend to be training for those painful type stimulus workouts that we see in the Open. And there's seasons where we do that. There's seasons when we really need to focus on heavy barbell cycling, moving heavy barbells around, and we sort of peak towards all of that. This was one of those cycles where we actually had a lot of volume, but all of it was at a, I mean, I want to say all this, but I know that some of the workouts were very, very challenging, but it wasn't at this in season, we're killing ourselves kind of pace that we experience. So there were elements of the elite track that were certainly preparing athletes for the Legends Championship, which was the next big push for 60 plus Boulder athletes. So they didn't have as much dial back, but almost everyone had this sense of hey, we're building foundation, we're practicing and developing our high level gymnastic skills. We're doing moderate efforts on a barbell. We're not getting crazy heavy, We're not looking to cycle super heavy loads, although we definitely got up there towards the end of the cycle. But it was really one of those cycles that allows us to build a foundation without over pushing things, keeping ourselves very healthy, and in my mind, laying the foundation for what we're moving into in this next cycle, which is the 2026 CrossFit Games season. It was one of those cycles that is this wonderful transition. It's fun. I think a lot of the workouts were really fun. And I think that for Boulder athletes competing at the Legends Championship at that elite level, I think they'll be well prepared um, for what Joe and I have come up with for for that competition. There's some good stuff there for you, my friend, and things like, I mean, there's some leaks, there's some information out there, and you still don't even know the workouts. I can't even tell you as of this publication. It's great.
I'm very eager. Apparently, there was a call that Joe shared some information. I did not make the call. I didn't even know it was taking place, and I'm a little bummed. It's not going to change much of what I will do or how I will prepare, so I'm not too devastated about it. But um, I am very eager to learn what those workouts are. I have been doing some swimming. Jason, I've been doing two-a-days. I've been doing two-a-days. This is the biggest change for me. That's a personal thing. I am feeling the benefits of that. But let me speak a little bit to the Keystone Cycle to build on what you had said. This has been a really interesting cycle for me. Now, let me set my biases aside. Like, I love boulder programming. I'm not shying away from that. Okay, that's a thing. But here are some objective truths where, look, I've been doing the programming for long enough where my fitness has evolved and adapted to a place where I'm now doing the elite track every day. As much as I can get done on the elite track, usually it's 100% of the track. Sometimes it's like 95% of the track. And at one stage when I was doing boulder, that was like, yo, I don't know if I'm ever going to be doing that. Now it's like, no, this actually feels like the right amount of volume for me. And my body's responding really positively to that. To the point that you just made about this Keystone Cycle being difficult and challenging, certainly have plenty of intense elements, but also not like being soul crushing. That's totally how I felt. There were moments like I would text you or, send you a Marco Polo and be like, that was too comfortable. Like
Right.
I thought that was going to be soul crushing, and it actually was like a great proof point of my fitness. It was either that, like I'm making progress and this feels great, or it was just the perfect recipe to have a great effort, but not like destroy my nervous system. And I want to believe it's both actually. My fitness is improving, but there's a very intentional recipe there that
There
helps
is.
me achieve this great level of productive fitness and not crush my soul and destroy my nervous system.
You were the one. I get a lot of messages, but I think that you were. I think it was one of your Marcos where you said, "I just finished the burpee workout and it didn't kill me." And this was a workout that historically would be intimidating. It would be very very challenging, and it was surprisingly okay. I think that was you, right?
It was.
And I think about this Wednesday we did this workout. What was it? 8 burpees over the rower, and then an 18 cal row every 2 minutes. And I remember thinking before going into that, I was actually just a little bit, I was like, oh, this is gonna be tough. But it is a red workout. So I am going to send it on every single one of these efforts. And I think it was 8 total rounds or 6 rounds. Again, this was 2 days ago. I don't even remember. But I walked away from it thinking, like, wow, I'm feeling pretty fit right now. Um, on burpees and on rowing. Like it was a very fast effort. And even though it was a red workout, I wasn't laying on the floor afterwards. I was like, okay, that's it. Workout's done. I feel good. Let's put this rower away and get out of here.
That's so funny. I mean, look, burpees anywhere, I would look at that on paper and go, oh crap. This is definitely my Achilles heel. Like I cannot move my body weight that well. I can move it well under really short time domain, but anything that's going to persist, I'm going to really struggle. And so I still am conditioned to believe that. However, physically now I'm conditioned to be like, that's actually not so true anymore. And this is a new concept for me. So I'm still trying to like warm up to this idea that burpees aren't the worst thing. But I've had enough instances now over the course of this cycle where I'm finding some efficiency that I've never found before because they're not spiking me into the red immediately. and I'm recovering really quickly. And that, I want to believe it's also a bit of a result of like finally doing some second sessions and like my cardio base is improving. Um, Anyways, it's just been one of those like revolutions for me personally over this last cycle. I'm like, gosh, this has been it's been so nice to enjoy some of these workouts that I would typically look at and just dread.
One thing you've mentioned, and I know that I'm the guest on our podcast, but um, you mentioned a couple of times now that you started adding your second sessions, our capacity sessions, and that this was something that you've been probably wanting to add, and maybe I influenced that, like, bro, you got to do this. But it wasn't until after you had acclimated to the volume of the elite track and the recipe there, then um, it was about budgeting the time and making that fit in your schedule. But talk about what it's been like for you to add that, to squeeze that into your life, and what that, because I've heard it from you multiple times now in our conversations, what it feels like that's resulted in, as again heading into this next week's competition, but just generally as your fitness level.
Yeah, there was a lot of factors. One, I'm coaching my kids' football team in the fall. And so that was going from 5:30 to 7:30, and I would get home at about 8 o'clock. And, at that point, I've not seen my wife, not talked to her all day. And it's like, well, see ya, hon. I'm going to go in the garage. No, that wasn't going to happen. And nor did I have the energy to do it. So in the fall, that's really hard for me just logistically. Even though there is some desire there, it's quickly overshadowed by just the lack of time. And I can talk myself out of doing that second session really quickly because I just don't have time. So football season is now over. It opened up my evenings. I'm like, gosh, there's the time, the window is there. And to your point, you know, yes, I'm sore from the cycle and all the week's worth of work, but my nervous system is doing well. Like I feel like I'm ready to go do something and I've got something to actually give. So that got me out there. And then what I needed to do was, yes, I'm looking at the second session that you've programmed and I'm like, okay, that's my inspiration. I'm either going to do exactly that or I'm going to do something that's really close. That's just what I need to get started. So my first couple sessions were like, I'm just going to do something so simple and so easy that there's no way I can't do it. I can't talk myself out of it. And that got me started and that helped me start to build the habit. And now that I've got this habit going, I get out there, I'm like, okay, what is the second session? All right, that's what I'm going to do, even if it's a little more challenging or whatever. But it's been consistent. That's the key. Um, and so physically, I'm feeling like the benefit during the workout, but I'm also telling myself during these intense workouts, I'm like, hey, you're putting in more work. You can handle this. And so there's a big confidence element that I didn't have before because my mantra before, when those workouts would get really challenging, when I wasn't doing second sessions, was like, this is where you fall apart. Yep, here we go. And I would tailspin down that like mental path. And now I'm like, no, this is hard, but guess what? You're doing the extra work. You can handle this. Like that's my narrative. And so the narrative is more positive and like physiologically, I just think I'm actually more conditioned. So together, they've been a pretty successful recipe. At least it feels that way in recent weeks.
So I heard a couple of things in there that really stuck out. One of them was the James Clear Atomic Habits way of approaching this. Like, hey, I don't have to do this uh, as written just to get going. I have this hour. I can get in the garage and do something that's similar to this. And I'll say that I do some things sometimes, like that. Maybe I'll have a longer ski erg piece. And man, I do this session first thing in the morning, and the last thing I want to do is get on a ski erg for like 30 minutes. So I'll just, yeah, I might could do the concept two bike, but so I'm looking for the similar stimulus. Generally, I'm following the recipe to the T. I'm just kind of a guy that does that. But sometimes just getting into the workout space is the step that has to happen. So there's sort of like this small habit that you start with something small, easy to bite off, and then you've allowed it to soak in. And it seems like you're just now it's part of what you do. And then the second thing is the mindset shift, along with the physiological shift, which in connection it does magical things. I know exactly that feeling of being in the middle of a very tough effort, workout, qualifier, whatever it is, and just think to yourself like, okay, well, I'm well trained for this. This hurts, but I'm well trained for this, and I can work within these. I can work within these conditions for this allotted time. I mean, this is literally the things I think about when I was doing the Fittest of the Coast qualifier and the Wadapalooza qualifier all on the same week. I was like, well, I have the fitness for this. This is 20 minutes. I can do this. And I don't even have to kill myself here. I can I can do what's necessary because of this fitness that I have. And that mindset shift is uh it's pivotal. It's huge. As opposed to your old dialogue, which was, well, this is what I normally eat dirt in this workout,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
For lack of better words.
100%
That
right.
also you know, I don't know if this is the right time, you tell me, to talk about the recipe and how
Yeah. You bet.
important. Yeah. Okay. So I did send out a newsletter to all of our athletes. I posted in our circle community group where all of our athletes are together in this online community. After having this conversation with my wife, I was like, there's, we color code the workouts, and the intent of color coding the workouts is to provide really intensity levels for athletes to follow in workouts, right? If it's a green workout, this is meant to be zone 2. This is meant to, if you know your heart rate zones, it's really easy. You just look at your heart rate zone, but it's meant to be a very uber sustainable pace, like a talking pace. If it's a yellow workout, it's sustainable. Like if I do a 15-minute AMRAP that's colored yellow, at the end of it, I should be able to just continue for another 15 minutes. It's a sustainable effort. Like I'm tapping the brakes. An orange is a hard workout. A red is an all out workout. So we all know that I write that in the notes of every one of our workouts. Um, but my wife and I were sitting in our hot tub talking about this. And I said, sometimes I don't know how to express to our athletes how important following those color schemes work. And she's like, well, it's kind of like baking. It's kind of like a chef, like making a recipe. I was like, oh, I love this idea. I love where your head's at on this. My head just immediately went to like, okay, my wife makes homemade bread and it is amazing. And she follows the recipe to a T. Because if you don't follow the recipe when you're making bread to a T, you don't have bread. Like you could make this whole thing, and then if you put it in an oven that's 900 degrees, you don't have bread. You have a fire in your house, or you have something that is overly cooked and is not the intended outcome. You do the same thing with pizza, right? If you put pizza in the oven, and this is supposed to cook at 700 degrees, maybe it's like a brick oven pizza. You're looking for that crispy crust, and you put it in there at 200 degrees. This is not going to be the pizza you're looking for. The outcome isn't there. And I think in the same way, when we approach a training day, and yeah, Jason's written in there, this part's yellow, this part's green, and then orange, then yellow, then yellow. We'll call this last one yellow. But we go into that day, like I feel really good today. I feel good. You know what I'm going to do? I'm going to go red on this first workout because I want to climb this leaderboard. And I know it's a yellow workout, but it's an AMRAP and I'm going to crush this thing, and you crush it. Right. And maybe you do that. You deviate from the recipe, and you do that Monday, and you deviate Tuesday, you deviate Wednesday, and you do this for a few months. The reality is you're not going to get the outcome that you're looking for. You're not following the recipe. You're going to be scorched earth on one hand, which is bad. This is injured, in a bad spot. Injured, burnout, CNS, all that stuff's overly cooked or undercooked. You could be undercooked, which is also not what we're looking for, depending on what your goals are. Um, and the other the other piece of it is I had this train of thought. I got stuck, but following the recipe is not a suggestion. And part of it, and I'll say this to the entire Boulder Athlete community, is on me to be as creative as I can as the programmer to help enforce, for lack of better words, the stimulus of a workout. So instead of writing a 6-minute AMRAP that's meant to be yellow, gosh, that really feels like a race or something for time, right? We do 3 rounds for time and it's yellow. If you give CrossFit athletes for time, that feels like a race, right? But if I just control it with an EMOM, like minute one, do this, minute two, do this, minute three, do this, or round one, then rest, then round two, then rest. I can control stimulus with rest. So I'll take some responsibility of creating a recipe that's easy to follow
Yeah.
because that's part of my responsibility. Um, and that's just something that I learned and I wanted to share with the community. And the idea of recipe makes so much sense. I think of myself as that chef. And this is another reason why I do the programming with us.
That's right.
I'm not a week ahead. I'm not 2 weeks ahead. Like whatever you did Wednesday, I did Wednesday. I'm eating the food that I'm delivering. I'm sampling it because I want to make sure that the dosage and the ingredients are correct, and they almost always are. Sometimes Sometimes they're not, but at least I tasted it. It was too salty. Or this, when you taste your own recipe, it's like, oh, I put too much pepper in that. Oh crap, this is way too spicy. And there's no doubt I've done that. And we've all experienced some extra spicy stuff. But anyway, the recipe is so key to what we do. Oh, here's where I was my train of thought, and then I'm going to release this to you, Josh. Um, is that we as masters athletes and Boulder athlete, we do more volume than any masters program by far. There's no doubt. So people that have come from other programs have said, like, my God, this is so much volume. And that is 100% true. This is a ton of volume. But the way that we consume this volume is by following the color coded recipes so that the volume is taken in at the appropriate intensity. If we go dark with this amount of volume all the time, we're in trouble. And if you're colorblind, let us know. Actually had someone, they were like, hey, by the way, I'm colorblind. I can't tell the difference between the orange and the yellow. I was like, oh, this is a huge problem. Okay. So then we started adding in the notes additional information because orange and yellow meant nothing to him. And I was like, oh, okay. Noted. But when we follow it correctly and we
Mhm.
pay attention to that intensity level, today is a perfect example. Minute one, 4 ring muscle ups. Minute two, 40-foot handstand walk for 16 minutes. That was a long, slow 16 minutes to accumulate 32 ring muscle ups and 320 feet of, or whatever the math is, something like that, of handstand walking. But I finished, I was like, I feel great. But I did this huge amount of volume in in the yellow. So all that to say that this volume is only consumable when we follow the prescribed color schemes, the intensity levels.
This is such a good conversation, and I love the way that you've outlined this. You and I have talked about this exact same thing and both had our, like, epiphany moment on, like, this is how we need to describe it. Like, clearly the philosophy has been intentional for a long time, but it still needs to land with some people because even like myself, like, yeah, I'm a really experienced CrossFit athlete and I still fall into all these traps. I'm just as human as the next person. And so I have to be incredibly intentional, knowing myself, where I fall into traps, managing my own ego, and then being very honest with myself to say, like, yo, I'm like hurting. I'm kind of in the I'm just in the doghouse or the whatever the analogy is here in terms of my body physically just feels a little bit broken down. Okay, now honest reflection. Have I followed the recipe? No. I'm going red on the yellows. I'm going red on the greens. I'm going red everywhere. And like, yeah, idiot. I have to have those moments. And then when I also reflect on the weeks where, you know what, whether I meant to or not, I followed the recipe. Like I actually was in those zones. And the difference in the way that I feel is it's night and day. And in this cycle in particular, one, I've been the most self-aware because we've had so many of these conversations around the recipe. And two, I'm like battling coming back from some stuff. And so like also managing my intensity because I'm being forced to, but it's kind of been like the forcing function for me to go like, oh man, when I do manage the intensity appropriately and stick to the recipe, I'm still getting some great fitness in and I feel
Yeah.
so much better. So thanks for outlining that. I'm glad we had this discussion around the recipe. Really cool concept. And then the analogy around, hey, when you put a pizza, could be the perfect recipe, but you put it in a 900-degree oven, it overdoes it, right?
Overdoes it.
And that can
You
be
burnt it.
us feeling great, but we overcook the intensity and it just undoes all the goodness that we put into the recipe to begin with.
And I love that you use the word there are traps. And I think the traps, and this is part of me learning uh, to lead, 600 athletes at one time and communicate broadly. Like you said, have it land correctly. The philosophy is there. How do we make this land? And so if I set a trap like 5 rounds for time in of a yellow workout, it's a little bit of a trap there,
A
right?
little bit of a trap.
So I know that me, like on a Saturday, if I'm, having a bro fest with and with a whole group of athletes and it's a yellow workout and it's for time, this is the ultimate trap of going red on a yellow workout, right? And so that is where in the next cycle I've been quite a bit more sensitive, as much as possible. I think I have with setting some of those boundaries, limitations. What do I want to say? Limiters, I guess that, or throttle. I hope there's ways that I hold that throttle back for our athletes when it's intended to be yellow. When it's a red workout, the regulator gets taken off and you can go for it. If you crash and burn, that's fine. That's what red workouts are for. You experiment with max effort in those types of workouts. And if you can't do the fifth round because you went too hard on round four, that's awesome. But if you did that in a yellow workout, we made a mistake. And that's where I can put the regulator on there, use time constraints to help moderate that for athletes. And again, I don't see this as I say this as a way that we all grow, we all learn, and we all learn, um, like you said, like how an appropriate recipe and following the appropriate recipe ideally leads to week 9 of a cycle feeling just as good as week 1, even though now we're at 85-90% on all the stuff that we're doing,
Yeah.
which I have felt this week. And that's really, this is something that's even still new for me. Not new, I mean, been doing this for a few years, but I still remember coming to the end of cycles in my historical life, feeling so beat up and then walking into the gym thinking I got to do some sort of attempt at a 1 rep max. Like I can't even squat. I'm so beat up.
Yeah.
And I would still do it because that's what was written. And so I move into a week like this week and I'm doing um, a jerk complex that's heavier than anything I would ever do. And it's just not that big of a deal. I love that. I love that feeling. So
Yeah.
if you could give me a round of applause with our media little button there, Josh,
Yeah.
just making sure everyone's paying attention. Just because this is how we interrupt we get people going.
That's right. All right. With that, we're going to transition to the next topic because the meaty topic that we teased in the beginning, I want to make sure we get to, which is the next cycle. The next cycle. So, by the way, I don't want to dismiss or overdo. Legends is coming up, which I'm incredibly excited for, as I hope our athletes are. And so it's going to be a great opportunity for Boulder to be there, support our athletes, see their fitness being expressed. And that's just going to be really, really cool, which is what the Keystone Cycle has led up to. So that's going to be awesome. But for the sake of time and our audience's attention span, I want to get into the next cycle. And so you've programmed that or working through putting final polish on it. Um, Talk to us about that. What's that leading up to? What are some of the kind of the nuances that you've infused there, focus areas and areas of emphasis that you're kind of getting excited about? Like just talk us through that.
Yeah, it's gonna be fun. The surge cycle is what we've got coming.
It starts on December 15th.
It is a 10-week cycle that will lead us directly to the CrossFit Open. So we will have a 4-week push, which we're considering that sort of the overload, the foundational push on this, and then a very clear deload after 4 weeks, which will be 50% of the volume that we normally do in a given week. Then we'll have another 4-week sort of performance push with the intention of doing a lot of open prep type work, which is really some of the funnest stuff we do all year. And then we taper right into that Thursday announcement of the CrossFit Open, whatever day in February that is. I used all kinds of math and algorithms to make sure that 10 weeks was specifically perfect here. And it worked out really well that way. I very much love 4 weeks pullback, 4 weeks pullback. I think for my body, I think for our athletes, there is a sustainability in building for 4 weeks and then letting the body and the CNS recover, and even time recover. I know that on deload weeks, I just have more time and space in my life, and I really enjoy that. Waiting until January is too late for the CrossFit Open, so we're not going to suddenly shock the system with volume intensity in the middle of January to cram for the CrossFit Open. So we're going to uh, build the foundation in the first 4 weeks to create a massive like performance base, avoiding coasting. We're already optimizing while everyone else is like, I don't know, enjoying Christmas dinner. We're still like still spending time with family. We're still training though. But then and then we really push in those last 4 weeks before the Open. Again, it's fun. Um, we'll get into the type of stuff that we'll see in those segments, but we will have a slight change in our template, our weekly template, which is always fun.
Yeah.
Monday, we're bringing snatch back because man, it's just so fun to snatch on a Monday. Like you're freshest, let's go. So gymnastics, pulling, and snatch is on Monday. Tuesday is going to be where we're focusing a lot on deadlift, hinging, and grunt work.
Hmm.
And then Wednesday, the emphasis is jerk and pressing. So that'll be similar on Wednesdays to what we've been doing right now. That really leads us to being able to do a lot of CrossFit Open style preparation for that Wednesday red workout. And again, for those that aren't familiar, we typically have our all out, our max effort workout as the last main piece in our primary session on a Wednesday because we have Thursday to allow our bodies to recover from a maximal effort. And there's nothing that really emphasizes the open like pushing movements like wall balls, burpees, machines. So we'll see a lot of those on Wednesdays. But this alternating hip function between Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday allows us to stack sort of 3 barbell days in a row without a ton of overlap. Now, we have done a lot of squatting on Tuesdays in this cycle that we're currently on, and we're moving squats to Saturdays. So if you one of the things that often happens on Saturdays is people have a little bit looser schedules. They tend to train with friends more on Saturdays, not always, but a little bit more. I know that you spend some time with Justin on Saturdays from time to time, and I tend to train with a larger group on Saturdays, and that's when we're squatting. And I think that'll be really fun to have some big squat days, serious squat days on Saturday. Again, knowing that we have Sunday as a recovery day, we will have a significant emphasis on back squat during the foundational part, the first 4 weeks of this cycle. We'll switch that to front squat for that front rack stability piece in the second half of this cycle on Saturdays. Although we'll have back and front squats, we'll just have an emphasis beyond back squats in the first half, the emphasis more on front squats, although we'll see both throughout the entire cycle. Saturdays are going to be a blast because of those heavy squats and of course a finisher that reinforces squats and prepares us for CrossFit Open movements. We're doing a ton of open tests. You can plan for an open style test every Saturday starting the first week. So whether it is a specific open test or a
Open style.
creative version of the open test. So for example, there is one of the open tests that we will redo, and this is week 7, 8, 9, somewhere in there. Is let's see, it was the workout was box jumps or box step ups and pistol squats and clean and jerks. It had that kind of feel to it. I think it was box step up. Yeah, it was box steps. And then the second half had like pistol squats and clean and jerks. Now I'm forgetting what the actual workout was, but I decided to pull that in there because that's Saturdays again. You're just going to be able to have a lot of fun with a potentially larger group of athletes where when people get together, they tend to go dark. They can tend to compete with each other. And we want to encourage that for that finisher on a Saturday. This is going to be different than the finishers we normally have, which are primarily machine driven, like 8 rounds of, 30-second max effort on a ski erg. Like I love that stuff as max effort work. It's some of my favorite capacity building. But we will see on Saturdays open tests to finish off every one of those Saturdays. It's really fun stuff coming.
I like that.
Open workouts that we love, we hate to love and love to hate. Hate to love. I don't know if that's the right phrasing. Um, I'll tease that another one of them that's in there is the dumbbell snatch burpee box jump over workout. Do you know which one I'm talking about?
Right. Yep.
Yep. It's going to be great. I think we always got to have that in the mix. It's one of those just wonderful tests that isn't, it's not that long if you really go fast. Our second sessions, we'll be testing something else, not testing, we'll be incorporating in our second sessions some workouts that aren't green. So during the last cycle, the Keystone Cycle, all of our second sessions were zone 2 based. So maybe we touched zone 3 on some of the running intervals briefly towards the latter part, but now in this next piece, we're going to turn the heat up just a touch on the second sessions to allow us to have slightly shorter second sessions with just a touch more yellow, a little orange. There might be a 5K test in there towards the latter part, just a little bit of orange, no red at all in that second session. But we're going to turn up the screws a little bit to build that capacity. It's a capacity session. And there's seasons where we want that to be zone 2, laying the foundation of capacity. And there's other seasons like preparing for the games, and I also believe preparing for the Open, where we want to dial that up and get just a little bit more intensity, machine based, so we're not beat up because of it, but our CNS gets a little taste of some intensity. So those are some of the highlights, and I'm happy to fill in any gaps. But
Yeah, that's great. I definitely am tracking the vision. I do like the change on Saturdays. That will be fun. Justin and I feel like I don't feel like I think every single time he and I have trained together, we've done bench and deadlift. And he's a really strong deadlifter, so he pulls me along there, and I'm
good.
pretty good at bench, and so I've pulled him along there, and it's been good for both of us. Um, but I'm ready to do some new movements on Saturdays with him, so that'll be exciting.
And another thing, and speaking to you specifically, and this is probably a number of athletes I can think of can relate to this. On our Tuesday deadlift work, there will be a few weeks of dedicated, not touch and go deadlift work because we're really going to be building some dead stop capacity on deadlifts. There have been times in the Open when we've been tested, or in qualifiers when we've been tested on dead stop type work. But towards the latter part, we'll be working on cycling deadlifts. We want to build a significant capacity of cycling deadlifts. Of course, in some of the Open tests, we'll be cycling deadlifts as well. But this is one of those things where we want our athletes to be at that 40-50% of our one rep max deadlift, being able to cycle those deadlifts 15 to 20 times.
Yeah.
We really want to build that capacity. So that's going to be mixed in there as well. And the other thing that I didn't mention was we will, for the elite track, continue to have battery work Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And this is going to have a lot of barbell cycling baked into it because it's just something that's necessary to do. Battery sessions are typically designed for those preparing for immediate competitions. And so we sort of have them mixed with things that would prepare them for immediate competitions. For this cycle, the battery work will be preparing us specifically for barbell cycling. It's just something that, again, we don't do barbell cycling year round. It just doesn't make sense. It can beat us up a little bit, and we're careful about the volume on this. But the battery sessions this cycle are fairly dedicated to barbell cycling. So for some of us, that's really exciting. For others of us, it's like, that's tough. It's tough stuff. And trust me, it's delicious. I love battery work. I'll just say that.
I almost don't want to say this out loud, but I have really come to enjoy it. Love may be strong, but it's flirting with it for sure. I remember my first session. I think it was definitely running and push jerks. I'm trying to think of how much running and the time domains. I don't have it dialed, but it
Yep.
was, I want to say it was like a 2-minute time domain, and you had to do, I don't know, 200-meter run and 5 push jerks at pretty heavy load. And this was early in my boulder days, and it's definitely early in my elite track days. And I was like, holy Moses, I did it. I felt good about having done it, but I didn't feel good doing it.
Right.
It wasn't great. So I probably shouldn't have done it, to be honest, but it was a proof point for me of like, okay, this can be done. Now I need to stick with it. But now, again, back to the conversation we were having earlier, like, the level of effort required to accomplish those is very different than the level of effort that was required previously. And now it's just like a good next element in the training. where I'm like, okay, we're going to get our heart rate up a little bit here. We're going to exhaust and then refine skill. And like, I can find the real purpose in it and not just be focused on the suffering. Like I can really focus on the things that we're trying to build, which is that's an evolution for sure.
And it's almost that panic, that sets in when you first start playing with the battery work. I remember when I first started, implementing it into my training, and just, feeling like doing, jerks under this fatigue, or snatches after fatigue, well, just say any of the lifts under fatigue, would create this sense of panic. Like, I don't know if I can do this, and it was an anxiety, panic slash anxiety, and I as well have built the confidence to where, I mean, this Wednesday, I'm on a bike and I'm doing 4 push jerks, at a fairly heavy load for me, a load that would be very intimidating for me a year ago. And it's just bike and then jerks. It's not this like, whew, okay, I got to buckle up for this 8 rounder here. It's like, okay, this is the next piece. I can feel what's happening, and I can feel like the first round didn't feel great. The second round, I'm actually getting into my zone. Fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, you know, round, I'm feeling really good. Eighth round, like, ouch, that was hard. Like the last one was really tough. Maybe it was mentally. Um, but yeah, it's just this piece. You're like, yeah, this is part of it. I get it. I understand it. I have the capacity for it. But it is something that, definitely makes sense if people do want to try out the battery work, and they haven't. Like you said, it may be one of those things where you don't have to start as written. You can dial it back a smidge, um, or you can jump in. But I mean, pay attention to your body. And if it takes 4 weeks to build up to an RX version of the battery session, totally fine. Totally fine. I think athletes often, they just get in a rush. Like, well, I'm just gonna go for it and go headfirst into this. Um, and starting at the beginning of a cycle is the best way to do that. Actually, if we want to say it, this, I want to think like the first battery that we do in this cycle is something like, well, it's still so it's like 10 or 15 touch and go power snatches at 95 pounds as RX for the majority of athletes. Older age groups have that, adjusted accordingly, but like, you think about, like, okay, that's doable, but 15 is going to get kind of gross, and then we're going to do it 3 times, with some specific rest built in there. But it's not devastating, but it is hard, but it's not devastating. And again, beginning of a cycle versus the end of a cycle, there's definitely a ramp up in what the battery looks like. So yeah, if you want to try it out, initial beginning part of the cycle is definitely the place to start.
You know, so I'm thinking about our listeners right now, whoever whoever's listening, and the open coming up. I'm also thinking about myself several years ago, and like the way that the anxiety that would build, both the excitement for the open and the anxiety. The excitement of like, I'd love to demonstrate some progress, and the anxiety of like, have I done the work necessary to actually make some progress? And that's kind of always where I flirted. Um, so for those that are anywhere near that want to see some progress, man, this is the time. Like, get on this new
Mhm.
dang cycle. Make sure
Yep.
that you're following the recipe, and then trust that there is a really thoughtful progression that will set you up for success. Come open season, February, March. I'm very excited for this season because it'll be the longest period where I've followed the recipe and I've been on Boulder. Obviously, it will be the longest I've been on Boulder at that point. And typically, I don't like, I go hard on the holidays, and then I hope that I can be fit enough to not, be totally suffering in the open. I've not done that successfully yet. This year, I'm excited to actually manage the holidays, consistently train throughout, and then hopefully have my best open yet. The open is always the worst for me. I suffer in the open, then I slowly get better. And as the weights get heavier and the skills get more complex, like I tend to do better and better and better. That's both a function of my skill set and my progressive conditioning over those months. I just would really like to start the open feeling a little bit more confident. And this is the year I think that's going to be true for me. So that's for me. But I just want to encourage others, like, get on the track. I think this is going to be a great one. I'm excited about it. And I'm very confident it's going to help prep people for the open.
and it will, and it's and know that I have my eyes on quarterfinals as well because of the season structure for us this
Mhm.
year. It is stacked. So we are building a foundation for the Open and for that test. But once we finish the Open, we have one weekend, and then it's quarterfinals. It's very quick. And the qualifiers beyond quarterfinals, like semifinals, I know that I think you're thinking California, I'm thinking Alabama for in person. Those are just a few weeks after quarterfinals. So there's not a significant prep time between the open quarters and semifinals. So I am definitely thinking as we work towards the end of this cycle, that my sights in preparation are to have us well prepared for this open, but also as we go into the second week of the open, meaning we turn in the scores for week one, and now we're already starting to train for quarterfinals. Or meaning starting a cycle that'll lead us towards that with all those dates in mind. But Josh, I think this will be your best open ever. I think you will be at the size. You're a big athlete. I mean, you're sizable, and actually, you and I weigh about the same, which is funny. I had my best open last year, bro. I was 49,
Mhm.
and I had my best open ever, and it's probably the most. It's probably the best I've ever trained for the open. I'm the same as you. As I used to just start pounding it um, come like the holidays in January, I'm trying to catch up. That's not the case. Last year, Boulder athletes were well prepared, and I'm an anecdotal example. It's my own situation, but I think my division was very, very competitive, and I believe I was top five in the Open last year, and I've never done anything like that ever. Um, and especially the workouts. That first one being burpees and a dumbbell. Like burpees are not something you see Grubb move fast on. Or Boonstra either. Just a couple of sizable dudes out there flopping around. But yeah, no, you will be prepared, and I agree. Boulder athletes to be well prepared for Legends coming up because of the work done, and for the Open which is coming. And then yeah, like I said, beyond that, we're already going to have momentum leading into the next set of qualifiers because it's not like we can do really quickly jump up and just be great at the heavier pieces that come in qualifiers. We'll be ready for that too.
Man, I'm getting really excited. I'm actually going to do a second session here shortly and drop my kiddo off at basketball practice then and get that in. Jason, I am super grateful that you made time for this discussion. And I'm grateful in the way that we just had the discussion. I think this whole concept of the recipe, I've been wanting to share this with the community for a while now. I think, you did a really nice job of outlining that. So thank you. And then a little bit of the recap of the Keystone Cycle, which has been fantastic. And I hope folks have enjoyed that. And then building a little bit of anticipation and excitement for the cycle that's upcoming, the Surge Cycle, I think you called it.
Correct. Yep.
Yeah, let's go. I'm pumped. But first, we've got Legends, and by the time this episode publishes, it's basically going to be Legends. It's going to be that weekend. So for those listening and competing, like, go get it. I'm excited to
Yeah,
see
it's gonna be
everybody
great.
there. Jason, I'm excited to see you there. It's going to be a ton of
Yes,
fun.
sir.